Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time to unleash your inner tiger. Yes, after only recently having done a spotlight on both Generation 1 and Masterpiece Tigertrack during a Toy of the Week video, we're back at it again today. Now I am of course referring to the brand new Generation Selects Tigertrack, which is available to pre-order on TIFF Source now, so check the video description for a link right after we're done here. Okay, and here is Tigertrack in his box, and it's exactly the same as the rest of the Generation Selects packaging, but still it looks really, really cool. Love this kind of graffiti-esque artwork on the front. That's what old Runamuck is standing in, because it kind of reminds me of him and his partner's escapades in the original comic. Either way, it looks cool. Anyway, we're not here to talk about old Runamuck. We're here to talk about Tigertrack, and pretty excited for this one. I always say that, but I am. And because I love the character, Tigertrack. I just love the G1 toy, the Masterpiece, and now this guy looks pretty special too. I mean, just get a load of that. That's some cool packaging, actually. Love the way that box unfolds. Love all the kind of honeycomb thing inside. Very cool. Anyway, I am, of course, the last person on the Western Hemisphere to own and review this guy. As most people caught up with this mold in Siege, of course, first of all. But I'm very much looking forward to checking it out. I have seen the Sideswipe version many, many times. I've got friends that have insisted it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I've brought it to the pub in the days when the pub was actually a thing, pre-lockdowns and all of that kind of jazz. But yeah, no, I'm familiar with it, but I do like the look of it in yellow. So and here it is with his two accessories, his two guns, so let's check it out. Now that's a pretty handsome toy, to be fair, isn't it? I really like the look of it, and I do think actually it wears the yellow really, really nicely, probably even better than the red, which is funny because I was just saying on Twitter actually the other day that I thought that the Sunstreaker mold looks better in red, the upcoming spin out release, that the Generation Select spin out that's going on. And here, actually, yeah, I think this is the opposite. I think this looks great in yellow, and it's finished really nicely. Proportions on this guy are obviously a little bit strange, I'm not going to lie. Like, it's a little bit dumpy, maybe. Beefy, that's what I should say, or is it chonk these days? I get lost with all the kind of vernacular. But yeah, I mean, he's just got the old kind of wide chest going on, these little bits, I think at the back, these kind of, the part of the roof, the car roof kind of sticking out the sides, does at least sort of visually create that feeling that he is perhaps wider than in fact he is, but he's got tiny little legs, fairly kind of broad shoulders. So yeah, maybe he's just kind of lean and muscly, like a bit kind of Wolverine-esque in that sort of stature. But I think he looks great, what can I say? Of course, you're going to want to get him weaponed up. So first things first, we've got this shoulder-mounted missile launcher, which can actually be held in his hand as well. But, typically this guy does have one weapon on the shoulder. I will say actually that normally on my Generation 1 version or the Masterpiece, I would typically mount that on the right shoulder. Here, that's not so much of an option because the little handheld peg that's on the side of that thing kind of precludes that. So you have to have it pretty much on the left shoulder, I think. Otherwise it would be kind of jutting into his head. And then he's got his handheld blaster as well. Now, interestingly, despite what I said about the shoulder weapon going on the left side, or having to go on the left side, actually the instructions do put it on his right side. And then of course what you can do is fold this little missile just down a little touch like that, so that it's at least not obscuring his view. I'm still not overly keen though, because this peg does then still, as I say, kind of brush into his head. So not brilliant. Should you prefer though, then of course you can just take the missile out of the launcher and put it into his hand like so, and then really you've got so many options. I mean, the actual launcher can peg into his hand as well, or you can just put it back onto his shoulder without the missile in it. You can have the gun in one of the weapons ports on his arm. Go nuts. Now actually in a pinch, what you can do, and I hadn't clocked before, is actually put the missile into the reverse part of the launcher, into the rear of the launcher even. And then actually, of course, the peg ends up on the sort of correct side for going on his right shoulder. It's not absolutely perfect because actually there is this little gap that you can see just there between the missile and the launcher, but hey, maybe that works. And what can I say? He's a mean looking dude, right? Really, really love it. And again, just a lot of kind of love for Tigertrack in general. I just did actually a review on the channel, Toy of the Week video of the original Tigertrack, the G1 version. And mentioned this guy looking spectacular, and lo and behold, in hand, he seems to be living up to that. I mean, the head sculpt is pretty glorious, it's got to be said. I mean, clearly a lot of the more recent generations molds are using similar CAD files or the same CAD files as the Masterpiece toys, hence why those head sculpts look so similar. You know, they're almost identical in some cases. And this indeed is very, very close to the Masterpiece Lamball mold. And actually, has some of the good bits and bad bits of that head sculpt. It's good in that it's generally very attractive and it does a great job at recalling the character, and it's not so good in that the eyes are very sunken back into the thing and quite hard to make out, but you can just see that he's got a fairly adorable little set of blue peepers just going on there if you look for them. Now, another thing that elevates this guy and certainly puts him more in common with the Masterpiece line is that actually there is a thin but present layer of paint on the yellow sections, like on the chest, which is really unexpected actually. I really did not anticipate that would be the case. And may I say, right off the bat, it blows the finish of something like Earthrise Sunstreaker right out of the water. It's very nicely done indeed. Looks crisp, well applied, fairly consistent coat. You can just about make it out around the edges, but it's kind of got that nice painty feel to it, but it's not so obvious that you're like worried about scratching it or whatever else. It just looks great. Really like the back view on this guy as well, with this very cool translucent windshield just kind of, obviously making up his back section there. And it might look a bit odd at first glance, but actually it really kind of reminds me of the Generation 1 toy again. Because that has, very similar kind of thing going on. Looks cool. Also quite impressive is the legs, actually, because although there is a bit of hollowness on the arms, just on the inner arms, just there, and the top of the legs, actually the bottom legs are really nicely filled in. So that's a great touch, very much appreciated, and makes a big difference from them just being, straight up hollow. Of course, he's got the signature arrow on his crotch plate just there, absolutely essential on any Sideswipe or indeed Tigertrack toy. A little bit vulgar when you think about it. I mean, what's it pointing to after all? But still, it's part of the design. Now, some nicely applied little paint applications in areas such as the headlights as well. And indeed, the red paint on the knees also looks crisp, nicely saturated as well, really packed in. And I think sometimes, red paint on black plastic can look quite bad, but this honestly is awesome. Now, in terms of articulation, head is on a ball joint, I believe, so it's got a very free range of motion, and actually it can look up and down quite decently as well, so that's really good. In terms of the shoulders, they go all the way out to the side. That's really, really good. And then, of course, they go up and over 360 as well. Elbows, you're going to get 90 degrees there, and you've got a bicep swivel just in there as well. No hand articulation of any kind, and indeed no wrist swivel as well. When coming down to the waist, there is a very decent waist swivel just there, actually slightly lower than I would have anticipated. I would have imagined it was up here, but of course it's actually slightly lower down in the crotch, but that's fine, it doesn't look bad visually. And then of course you've got a bit of hip articulation just up like that, you get to 90 degrees, and 90 degrees at the knee as well. And then there is actually a bit of ankle tilt, and I believe, yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of give in the foot like that as well, which, all told means that he's pretty posable, all things considered. And I do think that actually between head sculpts and posability, I think those are the two kind of major advances in Generations toys in the last however many years that have just really started to kind of, elevate them somewhat. And you can see it all on this guy, just looks fabulous. And lo and behold, he can even do a run. Look at that. It took me a little minute to get it balanced, but he will do it. So yeah, lots of positive things to say about him overall, it's fair to say. And I do feel like he stacks up very favourably versus the Earthrise Sunstreaker mould as well. One thing I will say actually, just quickly, is that it's weird that these two moulds don't kind of gel together or feel more cohesive as a whole. It seems to be almost tradition because, it's a bit of a habit of Hasbro and Takara. I mean, it's the same in Masterpiece. Masterpiece Sunstreaker and Sideswipe, those two molds, they don't kind of fit necessarily stylistically. And even in Generation 1, those two, the original toys. So maybe it's like a tradition, I don't know. But in any case here, I do feel like actually the Tigertrack and Sideswipe mold is the better one. Do you know what I mean? From everything I've seen. I do like Sunstreaker, and ultimately I did give it a positive review. But, the quibbles have started to come out a little bit in my mind. Fun transformation, but just, I don't know, some of the execution or whatever else. Whereas this guy, I think, presents better overall. Certainly the fit and finish and whatever else, that paint job elevates it in my mind. And lo, here he is with a number of other recent Earthrise Autobots as well, and really taking his place quite nicely. I mean, it depends how you feel about repaints of this nature, I guess. Some people just want the original cartoon characters, and that's it. Some people just want cool-looking robots. I think whichever category you fall into, honestly, he looks like one of the best, in my opinion. He just pops. That yellow is so nice and really adds something to this palette overall. And here he is with his two namesakes. Of course, you've got the G1 toy just here and the Masterpiece version just here. All kind of exclusives or special versions of some kind, which is really interesting. It's kind of a bit of a theme for this character. The G1 toy, of course, wasn't released back in the day during sort of actual Generation 1, if you will, but it does still count as G1, but it was a convention exclusive much later. Check out the Toy of the Week video for that one if you want to hear all about it. But yeah, as I said earlier, I really love this colour scheme on all different versions of this mould. I just think it looks terrific. Something about a yellow side swipe just really works for me. What can I say? And I do think that they're all fantastic representations of the character. The G1 toy will always have a really special place in my heart, just because I think those stickers are glorious. What can I say? Absolutely glorious. But the other versions of the mould live up to it. Right, so pretty spectacular robot mode, but let's go ahead and check out transformation and that vehicle mode, shall we? Okay, transformation done, and it's a fun one. Let me just say that it's a lot of fun. It's one of those transformations that you can just kind of breeze through. It's fairly intuitive as to what's going on, bar maybe a little bit just in the feet just there, but even then it's not difficult at all. I really like it. I like how everything kind of tabs together very solidly as well. At the risk of beating a dead horse, I do feel again like it's superior to how Sunstreaker transforms, just in the kind of satisfaction that you get from everything clipping together just so in the vehicle mode, which is kind of what I was looking for from old Sonny there. So bless him. I keep on bringing him up in a sort of derogatory light, which is he definitely wouldn't like that, let's be fair. As for the result, well, judge for yourself, but I think it looks pretty spectacular. I'm a big fan of this car mode. It's a very stylized thing. It's ultimately not a Lamborghini Countach, as you can no doubt see, but it looks cool all the same. It's kind of very futuristic in its kind of styling. I really like this translucent, windshield just there. I think that looks just spectacular, really. Overall, very, very sleek, nice design. As I've already mentioned, the whole bonnet section looks really on point, nice crisp paint. There's a close-up of that translucent plastic windshield, and again, it shows through a little bit of detail underneath, but overall, spectacular stuff. Now, interestingly, I will say that there is a little bit of a colour matching differential just going on here between the two yellows, the two sections. But again, nowhere near as pronounced as Sunstreaker. So for everybody kind of saying, oh, well, very difficult to match those yellows, I mean, they did it right here. Or certainly a better job anyway. Nice shiny wheels too, with a really decent little coat of silver on there, and some very attractive little details. So ultimately, it's a very strong showing for this car mode. Honestly, very nice indeed. And what you can then do is plug in some of his weapons. So the old missile launcher goes on the roof, just like that. And then his handheld blaster can go into some of the pegs on the side, like that. That's slightly less aerodynamic, I would say, but still he looks pretty loaded and ready for battle. Have to say this guy rolls pretty well too, certainly better than a number of the other Earthrise toys that I've been reviewing of late. The other Earthrise kind of War for Cybertron molds, such as things like Trailbreaker, whatever else, and yeah, nice. All four wheels hit the floor, all four wheels roll, it's good. Now, of course, talking about Sunstreaker, we better go ahead and do a bit of a comparison of the two. And again, I just think that the colour matching, generally speaking, on Tigertrack is better. I mean, to be fair to them, they've obviously got more paint on here, so maybe it's easier. And actually the yellow just on the sides here is quite comparable to the yellow on the top of Sunstreaker's roof, if you have Sunstreaker in hand. But just because it doesn't have those bare plastic sections that just sort of stick out like a bit of a sore thumb on Sunstreaker, it just looks all the better for it. But still, you know what? They're both fun molds, both fun toys. And yeah, there you go. Now, ultimately, where he does look pretty swish is next to other versions of Tigertrack. And here you can see him with the Generation 1 toy, which of course is a more traditional Lamborghini Countach. And yeah, they do look very good fun together. A nice reinterpretation of the original design. And then let's bring in the Masterpiece version as well. And then, as I said earlier, 3 very different versions of the same character, but all very much appreciated. Love all 3 of them. In conclusion then, Tigertrack is a smash. Honestly, really great toy. I really like the design. Transformation is fun. Robot mode is cool. Some really nice little details like the filled in legs and things like that. And the car mode is banging. Not a word I use very often, but I feel like it applies in this case. I guess what you could say overall is that this thing gets a toot. So as it turns out, Tigertrack is pretty tantalizingly terrific no matter the mold. Now as I mentioned earlier, you'll find a link to TIFF sources listing for this guy in the video description, and I'm aiming to get a full photo review up on their blog soon. Otherwise that's it from me, so don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and have a great rest of your day. TTFN.